Caddis Maximus here, this time with a review of an American-made tool, a Williams H50-51B 3/4 inch drive Pear head ratchet. And I actually picked this up used. Obviously, it was in pretty nice condition. And it actually turns out these are still sold to this day. It has a vintage Williams Pear head ratchet feel with just a forged I-beam, but they're still being sold. There are some, at least at the time of this video, for like $105 on Amazon. Elsewhere on the web, about $150, and that's what you might expect for an American-made Williams. Snap-on is who would be covering the warranty, and I've had intermittent success, but that's for the lifetime warranty of the ratchet, and you can still get rebuild kits. And then the big deal about a Pear head ratchet, which I had not been mentioning earlier, is when you have issues with a Pear head, when you replace it, you're replacing both portions of the ratchet mechanism, the pawls as well as the gear, which is actually the anvil. Or, of course, in a round head ratchet, the teeth around the frame of the ratchet itself, which is not replaceable. In practice, it takes a long time to actually physically wear out a ratchet, although people definitely do in production environments or just end up breaking them. This unit's 20 inches long, or just a little bit longer than 1.5 feet. And it's definitely pretty heavy duty, and the ratchet pawl is supported on both sides. And it is proper. The screws go through the head and then screw into the bottom plate, so when you get a rebuild kit, you're actually replacing everything. Probably the one criticism, although I run into it more on large tools, it's hard to get like an absolutely perfect large tool, but I did want to mention, you can see there is a slight curve there. With these long forgings, and you have to be careful with long extensions and those types of tools, is it's really difficult to make them, you know, super duper straight unless they go through an additional manufacturing straightening process. And surprisingly enough, they don't do that a ton because it adds a lot of expense. This is a reasonable price for an American-made Williams ratchet, being, even at $150 still isn't really that bad. If this said Snap-on on it, it would probably be an amazing price. And it is made by Snap-on in the United States. I don't know if it's made at like what factory or anything like that, but definitely is a pretty decent unit. The anvil play is not too bad. It's actually reasonably tight. Roundhead ratchets tend to have a bit looser anvils, I will admit that. And it has a reasonably strong ball detent, although I wish it was a lot stronger, and let me go ahead and demonstrate that. I need to put something down here so I don't dent my table. Oftentimes they'll be using large heavy sockets. We have a 2 1/8 inch old Proto LA here, and the detent is pretty nice and holds the socket reasonably well, but it's something you need to be aware of as many times you are using large sockets. And if you're walking or carrying it around, the socket will just fall off. Usually with Snap-on products, the detents are super duper strong, but it's actually pretty soft given the fact that it's a 3. It would work for most socket sizes. It's not going to be an issue. But they do make large and heavy 3/4 inch drive sockets, and those are going to have a tendency to fall off. This roundhead I've been demonstrating is an American-made New Britain, and actually I have a lot of other ratchets in 1/2 inch, 3/8, etc. But in the large sizes, no. It's much more difficult to find large ratchets, 3/4 inch and 1 inch, just because so much fewer of them have been sold. But on this New Britain here, they actually use 2 ball detents, and it's actually a lot. Surprisingly enough, each of the balls feels like it has about the same amount of tension on the Williams, but it seems just the fact of having 2 of them is a big difference, like, twice as much holding force. And I had to shake that quite a bit to get that to fall off. I was actually, excessively shaking it. But if you just are carrying it around or working on stuff, the socket's not going to fall off. And so that would be the big, criticism. Actually, I'll just leave this out here. I'll use this as a surface. I did want to show the inside of this ratchet because, of course, we'd want to. Look at that mechanism. I believe this uses the same mechanism as like the Duralast that I really like. And this one's used, so it's either pretty well greased from the factory or somebody had not used this very much, but did properly re-grease it, because there was all sorts of grease coming out of this thing. Oh, there we go. We have... Oh, that's interesting. Oh, no, those are lock washers. I thought they were O-rings. I've seen ratchets where they've tried to put O-rings under the screws. Can't remember, but it was a very cheesy ratchet that I ended up throwing away. Well, forget about that. Get this bottom plate. There we go. Oh, it's stuck to it. That's a nice beefy bottom plate. That's like 3/16 of an inch thick. Definitely pretty heavy duty. I don't know if I mentioned, but this is a very coarse ratchet, a 24 tooth. Now, brands like Detent do have some finer tooth 3/4 inch ratchets that are imports that are, you know, $75 or less. But for an American-made ratchet, I think this is more than acceptable. And it really looks exactly like the Duralast 36 tooth ratchets. Maybe that's who ended up making them, was a Snap-on owned company. If I pull out the anvil, this thing is just huge. Really, really just absolutely fine with how this is internally. Let me just ratchet it so you can see just huge teeth. You can see how far that ratchet pawl has to physically move to lock and unlock. Very good engagement. And I'm really surprised that this ratchet pawl mechanism I like, because when it's putting the pressure down, it's being transferred right into the body of the ratchet down here. And more of an angle this way instead of like a pawl that it's pinching, but they still added the additional reinforcement from the bottom plate. So overall, I'm just when I first saw this, I thought this was going to be some unit from the 1970s. I'm not exactly sure. Really difficult to figure out when this series first started being manufactured. But it's nice to see that it's still a continuing product, so you can definitely get warranties and rebuild kits. And for $105 off of Amazon, at least when I was looking this up, I think that's a pretty decent value for a 3/4 inch pear head Williams American-made ratchet. Plus, 3/4 inch ratchets are just great. Lots of people, you know, 1/2 inch drive usually is the biggest tools that they have. And they're inevitably trying to do stuff like remove a axle nut on a front wheel drive vehicle or things like that. And, you know, a lot of times 1/2 inch drive works, and a lot of times they break it. You know, the infamous Honda crankshaft bolts. You get a 3/4 inch ratchet like this, and you won't need any breaker bars. You put that on there and you jump on it, and it'll do what you need it to do. That's what's always nice about a tool like this. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody watching and subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.